इसे लेके फैंटेसी टीम बनानी चाहिए।
Hello and welcome to Inside IIM. My name is Ocean, and today I've invited two CAT toppers for a live conversation. Today we have with us Isha Mittal, who scored a 99.09 percentile on the CAT. She's a student at IIM Calcutta and she's been placed at BG. And we have Aishwarya Maru, who scored a 98.5 percentile on the CAT. She's a student at IIM Ahmedabad and she's been placed at McKinsey. Aishwarya and Isha, thank you so much for joining me today. It's a privilege to have you back on the channel. Let me put across my first question to you, which is what are the big myths related to CAT and CAT? And let me put this across to Isha first.
So I think one of the biggest ones is that it's a paper which requires excessive preparation. You need to leave your job, and all of that. That doesn't happen. You can. It depends on how prepped you are, what your aptitude is, because in the end, it is an aptitude test. So that is one. You don't need to leave your job. You can prepare for it with it. Non-engineers do have a bit of a disadvantage, but that's not necessary. That you will be bad at quant. It's possible that you are decently good at it. Yeah, Shwara.
So, like Isha mentioned, one of them is that you need extensive preparation, and like yours, the prep is not necessary like that. Dedicated and focused prep should be sufficient. And like Isha mentioned, I don't really think anybody has an advantage or disadvantage. I think everybody has their core strength areas. So I think that is something that generally people take up, that probably because I'm an engineer, I'll be good at quant, but I'll be bad at this. I think everybody has a few strength areas and a weak areas. So like, be open-minded when you enter your prep and prep accordingly. Don't take external sort of biases in your head before you start prep at all.
And let me ask you this now, Isha, where April has begun and students are beginning to wonder how they should start preparing for 2021. What do you think should be the study plan or strategy to approach CAT at this point in time when you have 7-8 months remaining?
So it's possible that if you start right now, you'll burn out, right? So if you're really diligent and sincere in your prep, you might actually burn out. What I would want you to do right now is actually figure out how you need to study and make a plan for, let's say, the next at least 6 months. I mean, that's like a good enough time frame, because for the initial part, it takes time for you to get in the groove. Right now, I would expect you to take a diagnostic test, understand where you stand, then go through the syllabus, see where you want to study what from, what class you want to join, if at all, what test series do you want to join. Understand what appeals to you. So let's say if you really like solving DILR, it'll take you less effort. Right? Understand what your pain points are, understand where your key strengths are, and then make a plan. And then for the last 5-6 months, give mock tests. Even if you're not prepared, it's okay. Give mock tests, analyze. You'll realize that that will give you a lot more insight on where you stand on your preparation. Yeah, I think that's about it.
Let me ask you the same question, Aishwarya.
Sure, right. So I actually concur with what Isha said. There's a chance of burning out, but I think currently the most important thing that you can begin with is give a mock test without any prep. Try and understand where you stand in each of the 3 sections. So you'll get a fair amount of idea where you have to work and how much effort you have to put in each of the 3 sections. And then right now, probably you can chart a very broad plan. Say you want to start mocks in July, August, and have a very broad plan into picture. And then currently, probably you can start reading sort of comprehensions, etc., or look up websites and start building your speed reading, etc. Like initially, try and get into the flow, and then start practicing. Don't directly jump into it, because then that might give you like a break. Like you might want to stop doing it in a few months. So start slow and then build up accordingly as you move forward.
And let me ask you this: what do you guys think is a good time frame in terms of understanding and concept building and taking mock tests and giving sectional tests, etc.? How would you spread it out throughout the year? Let me start with you, Isha.
So let me start out by saying that there is no perfect time that you can prepare for CAT. People have aced CAT in 2 months. People have taken a year and have not been able to ace the CAT. The idea is to get your strategy right. If you are decent when you begin, I think 3-4 months is a good time. I mean that's sufficient time if you really break your back, you can ace it. Um, yeah, I think that's enough time. You should be at the peak of your preparation at the time of CAT. So you don't start too early. That's all.
Right. And before I put this across, Aishwarya, I just want to let our audience know that we are open for live questions. So at any point, if you feel that there's something we missed, you really want to know, please feel free to send in that question on the live chat and we'll be happy to answer that. Coming back to Aishwarya, what time frame do you think is effective mock tests, sectional tests, and concept building?
So I think it really depends on like what your starting point is. So when you give the initial mock, you'll have an idea of how much effort do you have to put in. So like Isha mentioned, the time that each person requires to prep will vary depending on the effort that you put in daily as well. But ideally, say June, July should give you sufficient amount of time, say 4 or 5 months to go on with your prep. And I think mock tests you should constantly keep giving. I think one thing that people generally they have this inhibition that if they've not completed say all the concepts or the portion that we say that they don't want to give mocks. Don't do that. Keep giving mocks simultaneously. So I think that is how you can go about it. Mocks and sectional tests can go hand in hand with your prep also, and somewhere June, July should be adequate amount of time to do your prep or start your prep efficiently.
Isha, you scored a 99.09 percentile on the exam, and I want to ask you a two-part question. A, what's your background? Are you an engineer, non-engineer? What are your strengths? Which sections were you most comfortable with? And B, how did you streamline that strength-weakness ratio to score the 99 percentile?
So I'm a chartered accountant. I've taken commerce from 11th, stopped studying math a long, long time ago. So although I love math, I had lost touch with it. So my strength was verbal. I thought it was verbal. I didn't have to study it. I was very comfortable because I'm an avid reader. I tend to read a lot of books. I've been reading them since I was a kid. So for me, VA was a no trouble part. LRDI was like a hit and miss. Sometimes I would get like a 99. Sometimes I wouldn't even cross like a 50. So it was a hit and miss. I realized that I was not able to select my sets properly and what to attempt because to score a 99 or a 100, you don't need to attempt everything. Another cat myth that people think that you need like 300 or a 300. At 210, you're like very, very good, close to 100 percentile generally, again, scale marks. So now what I did was I realized quant is something I am bad at, and that's the only thing I studied. I enjoyed DILR, so I would just do it for fun. I would give a lot of sectional tests because that's where I realized the problem was. Ki solve to ho jate hain, but the time, then picking out, and then deciding, right? So you've invested 10 minutes in a set and you're not able to crack the third question of it. Do you give more time to it or do you move on to a next set? If अगर मेरे को देख के लग रहा है कि ये सेट डिफिकल्ट है बट एक्चुअली मैं पूरा करने जाऊँ तो it turns out to be easy. So identifying that became a problem for me in DILR and I was able to solve that with a lot of practice. So I realized that section tests in DILR are what will help me up my game. And so that's what I did. I ended up giving, so each exam that you give in a class, in your classes or a mock test series, it will have a difficulty level of the sectional test. So I ended up giving the difficult ones towards the end. And I gave like 6 odd ones in the last week before CAT. So that really helps. In terms of quant, that's all I did. I did everything you could have imagined. I did Arun Sharma, I did classes, I did mock tests, sectional tests, and I still scored like a 93 percentile there. So, so at the time I got the result, I was like, sectional cutoff shayad cross now because of quant. And in spite of that, the only subject I did, उसके बाद भी मेरा ये हाल था. It's completely possible. For 99 plus percentile, you need to ace one section. So if you get 100 percentile or very close to that in one section, I think you're sorted. Ocean, are you there? Aishwarya, do you want to take up the question?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just take that after the Ocean joins back properly. Right. So for me, personally, how it went was that when I gave my first initial mock to try and assess where I stood in the three sections, even though being an engineer, I am a textile engineer from background from the Institute of Chemical Technology. So I've also lost touch with quant like for a good 2-3 years. So all the three sections were bad for me. I was not even good in VARC like Isha. So I had to work in all the three sections like from scratch primarily. So what I did was I spaced out prep for all the three sections. So VARC I started by reading up, a lot of newspapers, a lot of websites that are there online, which have good articles. So how I went about VARC was first I started reading to try and understand the articles and, try and get the crisp of every article so that I'm able to answer questions like with one thorough read. And then I moved on to increasing the speed of reading so that I'm able to read quicker and also try and understand the crisp so that I don't have to keep looking to and fro when I'm answering the question. So that was my ideology when I was preparing for VARC, that when I'm reading, I need to get the whole gist and of the comprehension at the very first part, because I don't want to go to and fro when I'm answering the questions. So that is how I went for VARC. QA, like quant, I also did a lot of practice. I sort of exhausted all the material that I had gathered over the few months. I gave a lot of sectional tests. I gave a lot of mocks. Quant was a lot of practice. And I think how I went for quant was I did it in 3 steps. The first step was just trying to list down all the possible, concepts and everything that I should cover. And, trying to go through all of that. Then the second one was when I went through all of that and when I solved questions, I got a hang of what are my weaker areas and what are my stronger areas within quant. So I made a list of the weaker areas and the stronger areas. And then I sort of focused on the weaker areas while revising the stronger areas. So that is how I went about it. And when I was doing the second round of prep, I sort of marked the questions which I was not able to get, on my first attempt. And on the last leg of prep, I only went through the questions that I had star marked and the sort of a formula sheet or revision of the formulas that I've made throughout my prep. And for DILR, I think it's just getting the flow or getting the hang of how to solve those questions. Like initially when I began solving them, I was not able to crack them, but the more you solve, you try and get a flow of how to solve them. And once that flow is built, the next thing is just identifying which questions have you built a better flow on. There's sort of a pattern I feel to DILR questions. And once you get a flow, it's important to give mocks and try and understand what is your ideal strategy. So which sort of questions should you pick and how many questions should you pick to strategize and maximize your score. So I think that was my sort of prep for each of the sections in the last 3-4 months.
And at this point, I think we could take some of the live questions that we have so far. One of them is, what is your suggestion to someone who's an average student, bad at math and VARC?
You need to work really hard. There is no alternative. There is no shortcut to really just spending hours and burning the midnight oil. So you could very well call me an average student as well. I have never been my school topper, college topper, nothing. Even here, I'm not. So you don't need to be a topper to ace CAT. You need to get your strategy right. Understand where you're good at, and really go at it, at whatever you're not good, and see what strategy works for you. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's like you said, VARC and QA. So I think both of them it's like something that you can develop over time with practice. So probably, start slow, try and understand, like start reading comprehension and start getting a feel of how the questions are. Start building slow, and then you can sort of practice, develop, like sort of keep maintaining a book, try and sort of always have your weak areas, strong areas, sort of, classify them, then work step by step. So start slow and work step by step. It's very possible. I think I also am a very average student. And if I think me and Isha, we both say that we're average and we'll be able to do it, then anybody can. So you just start slow and keep building on it. It's very possible.
The next question we have is if you could tell the audience some coachings who give a strict environment of learning.
Okay, so I don't think you need a strict environment of learning if you're coming to do an MBA. So you make it to an IIM Calcutta and you will realize there's no strict learning environment here, and then what? Right? You need to be motivated yourself. Also, the environment of a coaching class depends on each branch. So let's say IMS Mumbai or IMS Delhi will have different environments and holds. So I don't think there's a standard answer to it, but you at this stage, it doesn't make sense for you to have someone handhold you into studying. That's my opinion.
Right. And the next question is what books, series, etc. would you recommend for CAT preparation?
So I have not personally solved books, etc. I just took like one sort of classes. I just exhausted all the material that they gave and then took a lot of mocks. So I don't have any idea, Isha, if you could shed some light on that.
Okay. And can I ask what classes did you go to?
Yeah, so I joined IMS and I only took their like classes plus mocks. So the only mocks I also gave was only IMS. So that was the one single coaching that I went through.
Okay. And what about you, Isha?
I think you can do Arun Sharma for quant. It will help you in DILR as well. So you become better with calculations in case of DI if you solve Arun Sharma in entirety, of course. Don't solve the chapters only. There's one huge basic chapter which you need to solve, which is scary. But yeah, I think that's it. In terms of books, I would just urge you to read a bit. Start reading whatever you get your hands on. Anything that is not entertainment, though. Page 3 is not what will help you here. So, apart from that, should be good.
And
I think there's this website called Arts and Letters Daily as well. They have really good articles if you want to start taking up a little difficult sort of reading practice.
And on a similar line, one of the questions we have, Aishwarya, is how can someone improve his English skills given he does not come from an environment where English is spoken and wants to learn on his own?
Right. So I think if you're looking at it from the perspective of the VRC in the CAT, you can sort of divide it into two parts. One is building up your reading, sort of capability, and the other one will be the extra sort of questions that come in, which will be like grammar or the jumbled paras that used to come during our time, please. So for the reading, I think you can start slow. Start picking up, say, easy novels or fun novels, which you will keep you engaged, simple English, and then build from there. Then move on to say reading newspapers, etc. So if it's something that you can connect with and engage with, I think that'll get you interested to learn more about it. And then from there you can move forward to how Isha mentioned that non-fictional books, etc. But begin with fiction and something that you will enjoy. So that'll help you stay motivated and stay on the course of learning. Once you start doing that, I think then you can build up and move forward to say more tougher reading books or solving the paragraphs, the jumbled paragraphs, etc. which come up. I think that is something that you can begin with.
I think there are two books that you can also try reading. One is Word Power Made Easy, and then there is a grammar book by Renan Martin. Because I'm assuming you're not very comfortable with English, some rules will help you. Otherwise, English as a language is very difficult to get accustomed to. So, as Shweta said, reading is definitely helpful because intuitively you become better. But if you want a set of rules, ki without definitely SI hota hoga, right? Like when do you pronounce C and when do you pronounce it as K? Like those type of rules you'll get in those books. And Word Power Made Easy is a very good book in general. Like it's a breeze to read. So read a few pages every day and you'll be better off.
Ladies, on the chat, we have a lot of beginners who are curious whether now is a good time to start. And we have about 5-6 questions that ask students who are in their second year of graduation, should they prepare in their second year? Should they prepare in their third year? Essentially, questions based on time frame. What's your take on that?
I mean, if they're in the second year of engineering, it's too soon. It's way too soon to begin, frankly. If they're still very motivated, then probably they can start, just by going through basic concepts, going through the formulas or reading, just developing a natural reading habit so that it's easier when they actually, sort of efficiently start practicing later on. But I think the time frame varies person to person, but say 6 months, 4 to 6 months is more than sufficient to, if you put in dedicated efforts to practice for the CAT, I think. In your second or third year of engineering, it's too soon.
Yeah, so also if you're in the second last year of your graduation, since it's lockdown, I'm assuming you don't have much of a social life right now. What you can do is you can try and appear for the CAT this year. Although you'll not be able to convert any college, but if you want to really make it next year, give this CAT with utmost sincerity, start preparing like this is the CAT that you want to give. So that whenever you give it next time, you'll have a good experience, you know what worked for you, what didn't. And this is only if you have extremely high level of enthusiasm, right? Otherwise, as Ashwara said, 4 to 6 months is good. The only thing is that
Did we lose Isha? Ishwarya, can you hear her?
Oh, I think she's frozen. Probably we lost her for
Okay.
a couple of minutes.
So while she comes back, wow, I need to read the Renan Martin book myself, I think. Okay, let me put across the next question to you, which is
Sure.
how do beginners prepare for LRDI? Folks who have no clue about the section at all.
Right. So I think I was one of them before I went on for my CAT prep. So I think for DILR, I think what helps is just practicing. So when you first will, like as a beginner, when you first try and solve, you'll feel like you're banging your head and you really don't know how to go through it. But the more problems you solve, you'll get into a flow. You'll try and understand, okay, this is how I have to think. And your brain will sort of become accustomed to thinking in different ways and different patterns. So I think practice is really what will be your make or break for DILR. And I think that is what helped me personally. So I started, like in the last 2 months of prep, I started doing like 2 DILR questions every day. And then once you have that hang of it and once you practice, you'll sort of get a flow of what works and what does not work. And then I mentioned earlier, then you can probably strategize when you're giving your test. Sort of try and identify which sort of questions you're more comfortable with and which you're not. So I think that is how you can work about it as a beginner.
Right. And would you suggest any specific resources for LRDI preparation, or would you say coaching material is enough for it? Any special books or resources apart from coaching material?
So I personally did not do any extra prep than what the coaching material I had, but I exhausted all of my coaching material. So there'll be sectional test, mock test, as well as the practice questions that they gave me. So I exhausted all of that, and that was more than sufficient for me personally, because you don't, like when you're giving your final DILR set, I feel it's very tough and probably very few people are able to sort of go through all of that. So all of the questions. So you just have to try and build a few strong points or a few sort of type of questions you're comfortable with. And I think that is a good or sufficient amount of questions to try and build, sort of a rapport with a certain type of questions to tackle during your DILR finals.
Right. And do you think building vocabulary, learning words, mugging them up is something that's important to ace the VARC section?
Not at all, not at all. Frankly, this is again a myth, I think. Initially, when I began my CAT prep, I started doing that, but then I realized it's not really helpful. So if you understand what the sort of the paragraph that you've been given is all about, and even if you understand the whole gist of what it's trying to say, that's more than sufficient. You don't really need to, like how people do for GRE, like sit and, make words and, try and learn and mug them. That's not really a requirement for CAT according to me.
Hey, welcome back, Isha. I have another question for you, which is that do you think doing sectional tests without preparing the concepts, without having the concepts built, is futile?
like, why are you giving a sectional test then? Like, if you don't know questions, like, let's say in DILR, I think it's a lot of intuition. So if you give DILR, I think it's okay. You can still, it's like practicing only. Again, even VRC works like that. But in quant, if you haven't practiced really, then don't give sectional tests. At least be done with like 50% of your portion, or give like topic-wise tests if you want to, if you really want to give it. I think that should be enough. Yeah, but don't give quant without you having prepared first. Yeah.
Right. And there's somebody who's asking that their accuracy on VARC is only about 45%. And I want to put this to Aishwarya. What are some things that folks preparing can do to increase their accuracy on the VARC?
So, as far as I remember, VARC will have your paragraph sort of questions and the jumbled or the sort of non-paragraph sort of questions. So I think for the non-paragraph sort of questions, you can practice them daily. So I think that there are a plethora of them available online through different, if you just Google them, you will find a lot of options. So you can just, like say on a daily basis, do 5 or 6 of them, try and understand where you're going wrong. Probably this is one thing that I did and helped me. I sort of kept a book with sort of the errors that I made and what went wrong and why did I make that error. And I used to keep going through that so I don't repeat those mistakes. So even if you're beginning with the 45 and if you don't repeat the errors that you've been making, that'll help you, sort of increase your score. So that is one thing that you can do. And for the paragraph sort of questions, I think you need to start reading. I think that really helps. I mean, it's a very sort of niche, like cliche thing that everybody says, but it genuinely really helps. Like when you read and try reading different things and start reading a little tougher things. So the tougher that you read, probably in your final exam, you will get easier paragraphs, but that'll be easier for you again then. So that'll save time also. So start reading something which is tough and try and understand the gist. So if you're finding it really tough to, sort of make the 2+2, read the paragraph and write, say, 4-liner or something of what you think is the crux of it or what is the gist of what you read. And then once you start, say, write it for 5 or 6 times, then automatically you'll be able to, say, form a gist when you're answering the question. You won't have to write it. So probably you can start with that for the paragraph sort of questions.
And Isha, so the next question for you is this: when somebody is practicing a DILR set and they get stuck and can't figure out what to do next, what does somebody do in that moment to make sure that they do well on the DILR on the exam?
So if you're stuck, try and make an estimate of how long it will take you further. So let's say you plan to solve like 5 sets, right? So that's about 12 minutes or per set. Now you want to aim at doing 1 set in 10 minutes and keep 2 minutes of buffer, right? I mean, that's the kind of backward planning you have to do to get where you want to get at. If you're stuck, understand what kind of, so let's say if you solved a set in 8 minutes, right? You have some more time. In that case, you can afford to spend more time here. However, if you think even if you spend 10 more minutes and you'll still not get it, leave it and move on. If you still have time, you can always come back to it, mark it for review and come back to it. But keep an upper limit or something like a stop loss, right? Keep an upper limit in your question that, I will spend only this much time. I understand that there is escalation of commitment, right? You spend 10 minutes and then you want like 2 minutes में आ जाएगा, फिर वो 2 minutes में भी नहीं आता आपको. Or then you're like, अब बस 2 minutes और, तो keep a hard stop. I think that's it.
The next question is, did you guys give any specific number of hours for each section in a day, or did you basically focus on attempting some amount of questions on a daily basis? And let me start with Aishwarya for this one.
So I was in my final year when I was prepping properly for CAT of my undergrad. So I had to devote time between my academics and the prep. So I made sure to give a particular amount of time for each section, like the basic amount of time. So say I had it planned in my mind that I'll do like say 2 DILR questions and a few paragraphs, say 1 comprehension reading and a few QA questions on a daily basis. So I had that sort of fixed planning or say a planner ready that every day I was going to do a few questions or some practice from each of the 3 sections. But sometimes that doesn't work out and you have to be a little flexible. So say if today I'm not able to do one paragraph of ERC or not able to put efforts in quant, balance it out on the next day. So don't be very stringent with the plan that you put in. But how I went about it is that I tried to put in on the weekdays, I tried to do a few questions from each. And on the weekends, what I went about doing was I figured out what the mistakes that I made. I had my mistake book in place, like I mentioned. So I went through all the mistakes that I was making. I gave mocks and I analyzed mocks. So the weekdays were for practice, constant practice, and the weekends were for analyzing mocks and sort of going through what mistakes I was making. That is how I planned and all through the 3 sections.
Isha, do you want to take a shot at this one?
Yeah, so for me, it was more about, so I need to spend more time in a section to really feel like I've done something productive. So I would generally do a stretch of quant. I would generally enjoy VRCs. I would do a few passages, but nothing consistent. I would also do DILR anytime I got bored with quant. So I used to think it was fun to do DILR. So I would just do that whenever I got bored with quant. And the verbals for me was whenever कि दोनों करने का मन नहीं कर रहा हो or just breezy you want something but you want to study, so I would do verbal.
Okay. Aishwarya, how did you maintain continuity when you were preparing for CAT, and how did you avoid distractions, etc.?
So I sort of made this place like the study table. It was where I studied. I did not study anywhere else. Actually, my brother gave me this tip that you need to have this particular place where you study. You can't study on the bed or anywhere else. So that was the first thing, so that your mind is active when you're there. Your mind knows you don't have to sleep there. When you're on the bed, your mind is sort of like you will drowsy down and you will go off to sleep. So I had this particular spot where I used to study. And I did this thing that I took consistent breaks. So I did not like sit for hours and hours together. After every 25 minutes, 30 minutes, I took a 5-10 minute break. I would walk around the house or, sort of take a break to sort of refresh myself before I sat down. So this is what I did like on whenever I was sitting to study. I had this one particular spot where to study and do it in short intervals of time so that you are not sort of burning out yourself. So after 1 hour, you will not feel like studying at all if you go at a stretch. Take small intervals of say 30-minute study breaks after every 30 minutes. And that is how I study, maintain continuity when I was studying.
And at this point, I want to share with the audience that some of the questions you've asked have already been answered. So if you could just scroll back, seek back and watch the video, you will get answers to those questions. And that's why I'm skipping those questions. The next question is what CAT exam pattern? So like, last year the pattern was different than the usual. Should I prepare for? And I know I need to be ready for both, but which one should I start with?
I think you should ask experts about this. People who are so classes professors would be good, and I think they would be able to give a better answer. I think.
Right.
Also, like a lot of preparation in CAT is generic. So for VA, you need to just read a lot. For quant, you need to the strategy can come in later, but the basics need to be built up. So until you have clarity on the pattern, don't strategize on how you'll appear for the paper. Just try and build on your basics. That should be good.
Right. And do you suggest any specific online coaching which supports their students well?
I don't know, but I don't know any online coaching classes, but I think Takshila has good material. So if you can pay for it, I think the material is very good. So that should be helpful.
Okay. Tell us your experience at IIM. How does it feel to be in the best B school? Is the workload too much? How is the crowd? How is everything?
Aishwarya, want to go at it?
Sure. So I think it's a different experience. So for me, primarily, it was my first hostel life experience as well. So it was a lot of news altogether when I went there. There was too much new happening, but genuinely, it's a really good place to learn, grow, and build. So frankly, when I see back 2 years, I've really grown as a person, and it is I would say primarily at IIM Ahmedabad, the first year is quite something. It takes a lot of you. It takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of you. But it's really great. The peer group that you find there is really amazing. People are really helpful, and frankly speaking, you get to learn from everybody and everyone around you, which is something that I've really admired about IIM Ahmedabad. So literally everybody around you will have something to offer for you to learn. And overall, now that it's sort of ended, it's been a really good experience.
I think I can say the same. I was actually telling my friend yesterday, I still don't believe I've made it to IIM Calcutta. Like, I'm graduating is a different thing, but I still can't believe I've made it here, because even in the furthest of my dreams, I couldn't have thought I'd land here. It is an amazing place. You will grow so much that you have no idea how much you can grow. You learn so much about people, about yourself, and that feeling when so in campus, everyone's like at IIM Calcutta, right? So no, everyone's just an equal. The moment you step out of the gate, right, and you meet someone, and then they see that, oh, she's from IIM Calcutta, and that respect in their eyes, that really means a lot. I mean, you'll realize it when you graduate or get in, for that matter.
IIMs sound mesmerizing, and the means to get into an IIM is the CAT. What are the 2 to 3 most common mistakes that you've seen students make that prevents them from getting a top percentile on the CAT? And let me start with you, Isha.
I think one is continuity. People tend to slack off in the middle, or they tend to be discouraged if they don't score in mocks. Or I mean, that is a pain, right? I understand it's not easy when you're not able to score. Nahi ho raha. You go at it for 4 hours and it's still not happening. You get frustrated and you drop it. Don't do that. You need to keep going at it. Just give it your best shot. Nahi ho raha to nahi ho raha. That's fine. But don't regret your efforts, right? Don't regret that I gave only 99% of myself. Like, give 110% of yourself. Another thing that people do is they aim very low. They say, मैं तो जा ही नहीं सकता, मैं तो यहीं जाऊंगा बस, मैं ये typical exams दूंगा, CAT तो नहीं होगा मुझसे. Right? Don't do that. You don't know your limits, or what is the harm in just giving your best shot and trying it out. Right? Kar lo, try. You have nothing to lose, right? You're anyway aiming for a lower school. At least aim higher, and you might actually get something better. The third thing is escalation of commitment on a question. Right? So जब आप solve कर रहे हो कौन और आपको एक question नहीं आ रहा, तो आप बहुत देर तक उस पे stuck रहोगे, तो आप frustrate हो जाओगे कि क्यों नहीं हो रहा मुझसे ये. Ideally, if you are stuck with something, park it off, write it down somewhere, and then sit with a friend or sit with the faculty of your coaching classes and sort that question out. Right? You might actually learn new strategies. So don't get stuck on a question for too long. A question in quant, a passage, or DIL, or whatever it is. I think. Yeah.
And let me put this across to you, Aishwarya. Some common biggest mistakes that you've seen aspirants make that prevents them from getting a top CAT.
Okay. So I think the first thing is sort of keeping yourself motivated through those your preparation months. So generally, I think it sort of happened with me, and I think it happens with a lot of people. When you don't get a good score in your initial mocks, or when the mock tests out, or when you're not able to sort of pull through in some days, you just don't sort of put in the prep. So consistency is very important. So if you don't put in the effort on an everyday basis and just slack off when you feel like it, so it's tough, it's difficult. So for that, what I did was I sort of like on the days that I was really motivated and I really felt like today I'll sort of solve everything I can, I sort of wrote down why I was motivated, and sort of wrote down a note to myself that you can do it, etc. And on the days when you're feeling low, read that note that you wrote to yourself. So it'll energize you to put effort on the days that you're sort of wanting to slack off as well. So I think that is one thing. Don't slack off. Keep consistency. Keep pushing yourself to sort of keep prepping. The second thing is, I think like Isha mentioned, sometimes you're really stuck on a question and you don't move forward and you lose a lot of time, like when you're practicing. So just star mark that question, star mark those questions, discuss it with people, and then on the next round when you're solving, just solve those star mark questions that you didn't get earlier to try and ensure that you understood the solution or you understood when you took help from your friend. So I think these are two things that sort of can help you push through getting a better percentile.
Right. Thanks for that answer. Isha, do you think CAT preparation is enough to do well on exams like NMAT and IIFT?
I'm not sure about NMAT because I didn't appear for it. I think it's good enough for IIFT. Let me tell you a tip for IIFT. In IIFT, if you ace one section, you are through. In IIFT, aim for getting like a bare minimum in all sections. Like in, I think there's 6 sections. So in 5, get a bare minimum, and in 6th, just ace it. Like spend enough time there, and you'll get like easy 99.
Right. And Aishwarya, what do you think are okay? So first, do you think students should build their profiles if they want to get into IIMs?
I don't know how to answer that because everybody is very sort of distinctive in what background they come from and what sort of profiles they have. So I don't think there's a specific profile building that is necessary. But there are a few things that people can look on, like sort of certification course, etc., which can give them a few plus points probably. But being a fresher, so not even having that job experience sort of part on the profile building itself, I think it's not really a make or break when it comes to having a very good profile as a fresher for appearing for like CAT interviews, etc.
Okay, so to all the folks asking questions like, please tell me something that'll build my profile to get into IIM Ahmedabad. Your answer is that, what's your answer again? If you could just clarify it in a single sentence, because you've got like tens and hundreds of questions like that.
So, so I'll tell you, internships, like for a fresher, from my perspective, I'll be able to answer it. So internships are not really considered when you're talking about profile building. Most of the things that will go on your CV are not really considered. So it's not like your profile building, as we're talking about, it's not really a make or break. So don't really put emphasis and too much focus on I have to build my profile, I have to build on profile. Rather focus on CAT, focus on acing the CAT and landing that interview call, and then you can focus on prepping for the interview. So your emphasis and focus should be on acing the CAT and getting that interview call, rather than just focusing on your profile building, is what I would say for IIM Ahmedabad.
Okay. Next question for Isha. What time did you start preparing for CAT? And if you could just give a brief outline of your preparation plan.
Okay, so this was my second attempt at CAT. The first time I gave CAT, I scored around 95%. I'll quit my job, but I wasn't very serious in terms of my strategy. I would just go give mocks and study with my friends. I was lining up a lot of time. But the next time, I was working and I had a positive time. So before the CAT, I had only 10 days of leave. So I had to prepare that's the full days that I had. And so what I did was I underlined what my working areas were, where I had to really work on. So for me, it was quant. And I was working when I was preparing. So I'll give you.
Aishwarya, can you hear Isha? I think we lost her again.
Yeah, I think she's frozen again.
Okay, so we'll wait for her to come back to life. Meanwhile, can you? So I'll put the next
plan
question.
that I made.
Okay.
On weekends, I would give mocks.
Hey Isha, you had frozen in the middle.
Yeah.
So we missed a part of your answer. If you could just briefly summarize what you said in the last 1 minute.
Yeah. So I just said that. So I was working when I was preparing. So on the weekends, I would give mock tests, while on weekdays, I would work on specific chapters or specific topics.
Okay, got it. Clear. So next question for Aishwarya. Do you think that preparation done during the CAT for the CAT helps in any way when you're at the IIM doing your MBA?
It does actually. So how the IMA curriculum is, there are a lot of cases that you have to read and you have to try and understand, come up with, analyze the cases and come up with strategies for the cases. So, when you have like 4 cases to read per day, your VARC really helps. Your speed reading really helps because the prof is going to cold call you the next day. So it's better that you've read all of it, and reading like say a 50, 60, 100 pages a day, your VARC will really help. And there are a lot of subjects that like there's quant, there are a lot of quant heavy subjects, etc. So your sort of CAT prep does help in a few parameters, at least in your first year, if not when you choose your second year subjects.
Okay, thanks for that answer, Aishwarya. Isha, are you back? Can you hear me, see me?
Yeah. I am. So I'll tell you why I'm dropping off is because I've packed all my stuff. I've also packed my router.
Oh, okay. So you were talking about your CAT prep. Yeah. So if you could just get back on the answer.
Yeah, I was just saying that. Yeah. So I was just saying that I was working when I was preparing. So I would give mock tests on weekends, and I would prepare specific topics. So I would wake up at like 5 or 6 and then study for 1 or 2 hours, or I would come back from office and then study for 1 or 2 hours because I've studied already before, so it wasn't that strenuous for me.
Okay. And Aishwarya, when you scored the 98.5 percentile, was that your first attempt?
Yes, so that was my first attempt. I gave it in like my last year of engineering, the last leg of engineering.
Okay, and because you were in college, so if you could just tell me what time you started preparing for CAT and how much time you would spend on an average every day through the months. When did you start taking mocks? So just a timeline to your preparation.
Sure. So how I went about my prep, I joined classes very early, but I diligently started prep somewhere in mid-August, I think. And when I started prep, initially I started with say like a 4 hour a day sort of dedication on a daily basis. And on the weekends, I would study for say like 6, 7. And as I went closer to CAT, and like the academic pressure sort of reduced from college as well because it was the last leg of my engineering as well. Then I started putting in more efforts on a daily basis. Say I would probably put in an 8-hour effort. And on the weekends, it was just more about giving mocks. So Saturday and Sunday, 1 mock each day, and sitting and thoroughly analyzing the mocks in the evening. So that is sort of how I went about prep with accounts.
At this point, I just want to clarify to the audience that the category of an applicant may matter in getting into an IIM, but the CAT percentile is not affected by category. So if somebody comes from a particular category, it's not that they get a 5 percentile boost for it. Their percentile remains their percentile, but they can get an admission with a lower percentile because they belong to a category. The conversation that we are having today is with 2 women who've scored 98.5 and 99.09 percentile respectively on the exam, which is considered extremely difficult given how competitive the exam is. But these girls, they did it, and they're humble enough to join us on the conversation and share the way they did that. So just letting you know, this is the place we're coming from. We have people who've done well and they want to help you do well, and that's the place they're coming from and we're coming from. The next question, and we've had a lot of questions like these, Aishwarya and Isha. It is students wondering, once you're into your preparation, once you've started taking mock tests, and you feeling demotivated because you're not getting the accuracy that you want, or you're not getting the score that you want. And although you've talked about maintaining consistency in those times, do you think it's okay to consistently score an average percentile on mock tests, or would you say something needs to be changed when somebody is in that scenario? And not just mock tests, we have similar questions about sectional tests as well, dropping or low accuracy consistently.
So I think it's okay to have average scores when you're giving mocks. What's important is don't let it be a factor of how you perform in your upcoming mocks. Analyze your mocks thoroughly. When I say thoroughly, I really mean thoroughly. Every question, like even the question that you get right, try and think of how you could have done it better or in lower time. So your emphasis should be in two areas. One is working on what you got wrong, why you got it wrong, and how do you get it right. And what you're doing right, how can you do it in lower amount of time or in a better way. So when you really sit and analyze mocks, and I cannot emphasize this enough, it will really help you build a strategy for what works best for you, and that will eventually help you know go from average to way above average. And that is what worked for me, and I'm like sort of coming from my personal experience. It really does that. So average score should not demotivate you. Try and analyze it as much as you can. Say maintain a book and always revisit it before you give your say next mock. Don't repeat the same sort of mistakes that come in, and you will like eventually move on from your average to much better score. So analyzing and sort of not repeating mistakes will help. And getting average score is completely normal. So don't let it demotivate you at all.
And Isha, I want to ask you this. Are you here, Isha? Let me just check if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Isha, a lot of times students
Yeah,
are
am
often...
I audible?
Yeah, you're audible. So a lot of times, students and the MBA community talks about how CAT is, 1 year one section is difficult, and 1 year LRDI is difficult, 1 year VRC is difficult. Do you really think that this difficulty level is it changes enough to be a deterrent to acing the CAT? What's your take on the sectional difficulty changing bit about CAT?
So every year, a different section is difficult, but you don't know which one it will be, right? So your strategy cannot depend on something that is so flimsy. So prepare to ace, and it's relative, right? It's not an absolute score that matters. So if it's difficult, it will be difficult for everyone. So that shouldn't be a problem.
Right. And can I ask your take on this, Aishwarya?
Um, Sorry, I missed the question.
So we were asking Aishwarya that sectional difficulty may vary on the CAT from year to year. So if somebody
Yes.
wants to score really high on the CAT, how do they prepare such that the sectional difficulty, the change in it, does not lower their score or does not harm them?
So I think there's no way to sort of get a idea of what is going to be tough this year. Like I think like Isha mentioned. So you really should focus on acing all the three sections, and it's going to be the same difficulty level for everybody. So it's important that you put equal efforts on all the three sections, and ace paces your prep. So don't think about what will happen on the day. Leave it for the day and leave it for the people who make the paper. You just focus on how you can perform your best on that. Then that is diligently preparing for all the sections, irrespective of what the difficulty level comes on the day.
And at this point, would you say what would you say are some tips, some learnings that you have had during your CAT prep journey that you wish you knew when you were starting your CAT preparation? And I'll put this to you, Isha, as well. But let me start with Aishwarya.
So I think the first thing is that it's okay to be bad when you begin. It's okay to get average scores in your mocks, and it's okay to not know where you're going somewhere in the middle. So nothing should deter you or demotivate you when you're prepping. So that is, I think, one of the key things that let it happen and keep trying to strategize and maximize your score. Don't let anything like the question that you're solving, if you're not getting something, if you're not able to ace your mocks, don't let it demotivate you like in any way. Like keep focus and stay consistent. I think that is the key or the most important thing. And the second thing is you really have to have that belief in yourself that you can get into an A, you can get into a B, you can get into a C. So if we can get in, you can also get in. So I think that is one thing that you really need to sort of have that goal in mind and work towards it. So I think one thing that happens is whenever you're giving a mock and you don't get a good score, you're like, "Arey, now I'm not getting in. Let's leave prep." Or you waste that 1 week because you've given a bad mock. Don't do that. Stay consistent and keep going. I think that really will help in the long run on the final day.
That reminds me, one of the things I heard Isha say was consistently staying average also helps. Let me ask you this, Isha. What's a message learning that you'd like to share with folks who are starting their CAT prep and want to ace the exam?
So again, let me check. Am I audible now? So one thing would be that mocks are just that they're mocks. Then at the final exam, they don't decide. I've never gone beyond 90 percentile in total ever in any mock, right? Overall, so it's okay. You need to. You cannot be good at all three sections. Okay, and so you need to strategize on which section you will ace. And if you want to get a 99 plus percentile, or even like a very good percentile, decide which section you're going to truly ace, and then which one you're going to get. So you have to do an ABC even in your sections. So it has to be a mix of what you're good at and how you appear for your paper. I think, yeah.
Right, and before we wind up this live conversation, Aishwarya, I want to ask you on behalf of the audience, for somebody who's going to start their CAT prep this year and will take CAT 2021, what are the action points from this live? So they're starting today, let's say. What would you say they should do now and going forward?
Right. So I think the very first thing is take a mock. Don't prep, just take a mock. Try and understand where you stand currently in each of the three sections. You'll get a fair idea of how much effort you have to put in the coming months. The second thing is make a very broad planner of say when you want to start giving your mocks. So in that duration from now to the date that you've decided when you want to start giving your mocks, prep on the concept, start reading, do VARC practice, do the different sort of sectional questions and practices that come into picture. And then, irrespective of what your practice level is, like you've covered 60% of the concept, 70%, give the mock on the day that you've decided to give. And start giving mocks and analyzing simultaneously with continuing, whatever prep is left. So make that very broad planner and follow that. And with that, say make a daily or a weekly planner of what you want to do on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and try and stick to it as much as possible. Consistency will really help in the long run.
Okay, final message for the audience, Isha. Oh no, I think her video froze.
I think one thing would be that know where you stand, right? Secondly, make a plan, and third, stick to the plan. I think that would be it on my side.
Okay. I mean, lovely how you put it. I want to thank you guys for watching. And if you have questions regarding what books to, prepare for using different sections, what coachings to take, what are some more tips, strategies, day-to-day plan that toppers use, just go to insideiam.com. We have a bundle of stories by different toppers who've written them themselves, a lot of them, and they'll give you specific answers to your questions. And if you had fun watching this live, if you learned something new and if this was helpful, please give it a thumbs up. And we'll be live every Friday. So I'll see you next time. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Aishwarya and Isha, for joining me today. Really glad that you made it. That's about today, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.